Members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints represent a faith practiced by millions, a faith which has also inspired its share of controversy.
I think if you look at Brigham Young's whole life, well, it's a conundrum.
It almost seems like he's a human.
I'm Camrey Bagley-Fox, and together with John Wilson and Professor Daniel Peterson, we work to uncover unexpected twists in the character of a man that we thought we already knew.
What are you doing here? You guys are crazy. Look at this.
Welcome to Becoming Brigham. This is a new series that dives into learning more about Brigham Young, who was the second president and prophet of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm Camrey Fox, and this is
John Wilson. I'm the co-host, and with us today we have Daniel Peterson, president of the Interpreter Foundation, and we also have Matt Crow, who's the managing director of the Church History Department of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who has been great in working with us to help us better understand the man, the myth, the legend, Brigham Young.
Okay, Dan, I want to start with you. Yep. What is this series all about? What are we doing here?
The series is designed to educate us and the Latter-day Saints about Brigham Young and about the group of apostles that succeeded to the leadership of Joseph Smith when he and Hiram were killed. So we're trying to make the point that Brigham Young and the 12 were the Lord's choice. And that they were, from my point of view, divinely prepared for the role that they were to play.
So Matt, you're here with us representing the Church History Department, and it's been an absolute blessing for the project to have the friendship and the cooperation of the department to give us access to individuals of expertise. But we'd love to know, what is the Church History Department, and why do we have one?
It's a great question. On the day that the church was organized, Joseph Smith receives a revelation that says, "Behold, a history shall be kept among you." So from the very beginning, Latter-day Saints have been a record-keeping people, a history-loving people. Brigham could often be found in the historian's office. He kept journals and he kept copies of his letters. Our mission is to document the restoration of the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Well, I was going to say, maybe people don't recognize it, but the history is being chronicled as we go.
Well, there's a lot of us engaged in the effort, professional historians and a lot of volunteer missionaries around the world to document this ongoing story.
So I'm curious, when it comes to difficult issues in church history, what is the Church History Department's stance on that?
Really, the stance of church leaders is that we should discuss challenging topics openly and within the household of faith. For us, that means that if there's a challenging topic in church history or church doctrine or whatever, we should discuss it in our families and in seminary classes and in Sunday school classes, that this shouldn't be something that a returned missionary is browsing social media in their mid-20s and they learn something that really shocks them or rocks their world. And the church has really made a tremendous effort. It's really hard to find another religious organization that puts as much effort into making its history accessible.
The information is there, like something as wild as the Joseph Smith papers, the fact that that exists. Which leads me to a question, Matt, which is like, why do you feel like having an understanding of our own history is important?
Of all of the records that we keep in the Church History Department, of all the history that we chronicle, there is some subset that we kind of label challenging. The vast majority of the records that we keep, the vast majority of the story of the restoration is a story of faithful Latter-day Saints dedicated to the gospel of Jesus Christ. For me, nothing could have been better for my understanding of and witness of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the restored gospel, to both delve into the challenging questions, but also just seeing how the Lord works with his people over time, how the Lord works with individuals, and how the Lord works with us collectively.
Latter-day Saints don't produce theologians for the most part. The scriptures weren't revealed as a compendium of doctrines. They're narratives in which doctrines, stories are embedded. We don't produce theologians, we produce historians. What happened? What was the character of the people involved in them? Is God present in these events? The New Testament Gospels aren't doctrinal compendia, they're stories about Jesus. It's significant. I think it's proper that we devote this much attention to history.
For us, it matters that a boy went into a grove of trees, and for us, it matters that we can still go into that grove of trees, that it was an actual place. And speaking of Brigham Young, he's really the core figure of the church's historic site program. You can go to his baptismal site in New York. You can travel with him to Kirtland. You can go with him to Missouri. We have his home in Nauvoo. All of the sites essentially touch on Brigham Young, and it's important for us that these things happened.
He's not just like a clean-cut, easy-to-swallow historical figure. And particularly in recent years, I think as more information comes out, there's all these wonderful stories, but you also get sides of Brigham Young that are less easy to digest sometimes, and bits of history that are a little messier.
It's a great point. I mean, I think one perspective is that Brigham was always controversial. In his day, he was a controversial figure, certainly outside of the church, but he also drum up controversy within the church. He was a strong personality. And from our modern perspective, of course, the culture has changed since the mid-1800s on really important issues like how we talk about race and how we talk about violence. On those issues, our culture is very different than the culture of 19th century America. And so to read some of Brigham Young's quotes, they don't sound right to us.
Right, they can feel very like, how can this be, like in a sense, like how can what's coming out of his mouth be right and be good when it feels so wrong to us now? And learn from mistakes too, right?
Absolutely. I taught seminary in New York City for 2 years. It was really fun. My wife and I did early morning seminary, and Doctrine and Covenants was the first year we did it. And I just tried to say to the kids with all the fervor I can is do you see how many times Joseph's being censured? Almost every other section for the first 40 sections is hey, Joseph, get your act together.
Get it together.
Right? It really is. We're never trying to pretend that any prophetically called individual has ever been given the gift of being perfect.
And the important point there is, how do we know that he was censured? He published. He was the one who said, put it in the Doctrine and Covenants.
Put it in the things, the rough's done rolling.
Well, one of the questions that's often raised in connection with Brigham Young, especially Brigham Young, is, can a flawed human being be a prophet of God? Well, my response to that would be, well, what alternatives does God have? I mean, do you know of many unflawed human beings? I know of one.
Dan, I'm sitting right here.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sitting right
present
here.
Company accepted. The Lord has to work with flawed people. He has no alternative possibilities.
It's irresponsible of us to think that a prophet can be separated from the culture in which he lives. The interesting thing is not that a prophet is influenced by his culture. The interesting thing is sometimes the Lord helps him see beyond the culture.
God had to take Nephi and the group out of Jerusalem to extricate them from the culture that had quagmired the law of Moses. He was trying to do a cultural reset.
Every prophet is going to be a creature, if you will, of his time. His taste, literally, his taste in food, his taste in architecture, the language he speaks, everything is going to be the language with which he grew up. There's no human way out of that. We can't escape that.
Prophets like Brigham Young also grow over time. They learn over time.
I'd say prophets are not divine marionettes. I mean, they will get insight onto certain issues in the Lord's timetable, not all issues. Joseph was still learning important things right up to the end of his life. The implication of that is that in 1835, he didn't know as many things as he knew in 1840. Brigham Young was still learning, and it's piece by piece, line upon line, precept by precept. We say that, but we sometimes don't really mean it. A prophet, like anybody else, is learning in bits and pieces and gaining insights here and there, and occasionally probably being surprised by what he learns, what he's told. And so to expect a prophet to be somehow omniscient, it just seems to be unrealistic. We put prophets on a pedestal that no human being, including a prophet, can ever really survive on.
Can we maybe go over how people view Brigham? What are the common good and bad things that people say about Brigham Young?
I think that one common thing is that Brigham was a great secular leader, but not much of a spiritual leader.
Right.
And that he was great at colonizing, he was great at business, he was great at organizing, he had this genius for that sort of thing, but not really a spiritual guy. The more I've studied about Brigham's life, it could not be more incorrect.
I grew up with that image of Brigham Young, that he was the colonizing genius, the man of affairs, not very spiritual. And so I thought it was fun that in the movie 6 Days in August, one of the earliest scenes is him speaking in tongues. And people came to me and said, "You made that up." No, we didn't. He did speak in tongues, and more than once. And that's really important. And I think, for example, the practical man of affairs, as they're about to leave Nauvoo, is busy in the temple doing temple ordinances for the people who are there. And when he arrives in the valley, one of the first things he does is to mark the spot for the temple to be built in Salt Lake City. I mean, it's not all about irrigation canals and sending out colonists.
And even as a very old man, when he realizes the Salt Lake Temple won't be finished in his time, he finishes the St. George Temple, and he spends this winter in St. George in the 6 months before his death, and it's all about temple work. This is a deeply spiritual leader of his people.
We'd also like to note that he established a theater, which is the least fiscally practical thing you could do. So if ever there was evidence that he was a man of spirit.
Yeah.
Another of the perceptions of Brigham Young is that he was thoroughly unlikable. A lot of the recent writing about Brigham Young, you wonder why people would have followed him across the street. But they followed him across the plains. And they did call him President Young. They called him Brother Brigham. And so this idea, he could be a difficult person. He could be cantankerous. He could really get himself worked up in a good sermon. But the people knew that he loved them. He would visit the settlements, and he had really an amazing memory. We have these descriptions where he would visit a settlement, and the people would come to him with their concerns, and he remembered their names, and he remembered who they were, and there was just this love of the people for Brother Brigham.
I just think that the saints have been victimized by a largely false picture of Brigham Young. And that's, I suppose, one of the goals of this project is to not revise his image, but correct it.
We know that Utah exists because of Brigham. And I think just as we were starting to focus more on the negative aspects, I think it does us harm to do that. I think it also does us harm to just completely soften who Brigham Young was and to ignore these painful aspects. I think that's not helpful either. Sure, you can learn stuff from just oh, Brigham Young was so faithful and all these miracles happened crossing the plains. And then when something comes up like blacks in the priesthood, then that can totally capsize your testimony boat. And so it's important to know all the sides.
In addition to that, I think about the scriptures, right? It's the scriptures lose their power as soon as we deify the characters in them, right? I had this conversation with a friend the other day. It's if the Book of Mormon was written just about super special people doing super cool special things, it would be a useless book. This is about a bunch of superstars, of which I am not. How is this applicable? But the reality is, it's not. But if we start to do that with prophets or even individuals in our lives and don't take in the full humanity of the person, we do lose power.
Right.
We lose power to appreciate the majesty of God's ability to work wonders through imperfect individuals.
In our next episode, we ask Matt Groh to talk about allegations that Brigham Young was a man of violence. Don't miss it.
I don't think we're resolving the problem, but it's kind of
but
unresolvable.
I don't think it's unresolved.
It's nice to know what the circumstance is, because I think there's a lot of speculation about the church is hiding things.